Now, these next two questions come in response to our review of that Lenovo P10 tablet, which of course is an Android tablet, and those are becoming kind of a rare species out there. We're not seeing a lot of manufacturers making a big investment into Android tablet devices. We're seeing a lot of phones, of course, but the tablets are few and far between. Google famously took tablets off of their store. They did replace it with that Chromebook 2-in-1 that we looked at that wasn't very good, but it's just giving you an idea as to where everybody is on Android tablets these days. The highest performing one I could find for Android tablets is the Galaxy Tab S4, which is running behind the Apple iPads in performance, but is holding its own to some degree. But these cost several $100s. And a few years ago, NVIDIA came out with their NVIDIA Shield K1 tablet. It was a really nice tablet. They don't make it anymore, unfortunately, but that one is much more powerful than many of the tablets that come in at that NVIDIA Shield price point. That Shield tablet cost $200 2 or 3 years ago when it came out, maybe 4 years ago now. The Lenovo P10, which we just reviewed, I would say probably costs about the same if you factor the dock out of the equation, and you're looking at a significantly lower speed in graphical performance on the 3D Mark Slingshot test, as you can see here. So it really is funny just how these Android tablets have gone backwards in performance because consumers aren't demanding more. Amazon, which I think is number 2 or 3 in market share. Apple is number 1, and I think Amazon and Samsung often swap back and forth for second and third place. Their Fire HD tablet comes in even slower than the Lenovo does, but again, it's good enough for most consumers. And I think what's happened here is that there's nothing driving tablet performance faster. I would say part of the problem is the fact that these app stores are giving away apps for free or are charging so little for them that it's hard for developers really to push this hardware any further. That was one of my complaints with the new iPad 11 review, is that there's really nothing to take advantage of all of this horsepower that Apple is building into these devices, which is why I believe Apple will have an ARM-based MacBook at some point in the near future, because I think that might make better use of their hardware investment. Consumers just don't want any more than what they've got, and as a result, we've seen these tablets go backwards in performance, yet cost the same. When does that ever happen in the technology world? It's kind of crazy, isn't it? And I am seeing the same thing happening now with Android TV. So let's roll the clock back to like 2014, 2013, when we had a bunch of these attempts to bring Android to the television. It started off with the Ouya, which you can see in the upper left-hand corner there. They had their own app store. In fact, they developed a TV interface ahead of Android's own official TV interface. It was a kind of a neat system that just didn't work out. Consumers didn't want to buy a cheap Android box. They'd prefer to spend a little bit more on an Xbox One or a PlayStation, so it fizzled out. There was also the Mad Catz Mojo, which had a faster processor than the Ouya, and I think they extended the Ouya store to the Mad Catz. That one fizzled out pretty quick too. And that was followed by the more powerful Razer Forge, which also didn't do very well. So all three of these attempts to bring a powerful Android box to the living room failed. The one that did okay was the NVIDIA Shield, partly because it has a big company like NVIDIA behind it to really push its development out there and maybe take a hit on it as it was getting itself out into the market. It's still the most powerful TV box that's out there, and it's running with the same exact processor as it was running with 4 years ago. Incidentally, it's also the same processor in the Nintendo Switch, and I'm sure if NVIDIA would tell us, they would say that the Switch has been the best platform for that chip versus the NVIDIA Shield platform. In fact, they were trying to make the Shield into what those other failed consoles were, but even with custom software for the Shield that took advantage of its processor, it didn't move units. And now NVIDIA is looking at the Shield as kind of an endpoint for game streaming from remote servers. So I think if there is going to be a Shield update, we probably won't see one running as powerfully as this one, or if there is an update, it will be another aesthetic change versus something more powerful, because there's just nothing out there that is driving any demand for faster TV devices. And we're seeing this now with the ADT2 developer kit. I got one in from a viewer named Robert who let me borrow his, and I was going to do a whole video on it, But to be honest with you, this thing is exactly the same as the Mi box and the Jetstream box that we looked at, and a few of those generic Chinese boxes we looked at also. It's got the S905X processor. It's slower than the Shield. It is slower than the Nexus player that Google released a number of years ago, their last reference device. Clearly, this is the new reference here, which is lower powered hardware that is good enough to drive a 4K display at 60 Hertz with HDR. They're not looking at this as a high-performing gaming device. It is a dongle, but again, it's the same performance as what you'll see out of a Mi box. The operating system isn't changed all that much in Android 9 Pie. It has a few aesthetic changes here or there, but really nothing that strikes me as something that we should get excited about. The remote is largely the same too. Wherever I put it, here it is. So there's just nothing here that suggests to me that there's an interest by Google in really pushing the hardware here to compete with larger game consoles. There is the rumor that they've got some game device on the horizon, but given how poorly these have done before, why would they jump into the market with something that just doesn't seem to be working? If NVIDIA can't get it to work with some super high-end stuff, what makes Google think they're going to be any different unless they do perhaps some kind of streaming solution like NVIDIA is looking to do? And of course, you can do game streaming on a device like this. So we're going to see, I think, a stagnation across the board with Android, Android TV, and certainly these tablet devices too, because there's just nothing driving people to buy these things. They'd much rather sink their money into a game console. And if you look at the Switch, which is essentially an NVIDIA Shield, people are more than willing to pay $60 for a game on that, but not the same price on something coming out of the Google Play Store. Just expectations of consumers are very different, and it's all about what brand is marketing your device and what they're selling it as. And clearly, an all-in-one streamer is not the desire of consumers these days, and that is why we're not going to see any impressive Android TV hardware on the horizon.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold-level supporters Chris Allegretta, the Four Guys with Quarters podcast, Tom Albrecht, and Kalyan Kumar. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/s.